Shalom, welcome to the Jewish Task Force, J.T.F. My name is Chaim Ben Pesach, and this program is going to expose what we have in Hollywood. Hollywood has now adopted the Nazi tactic of boycotting Jewish businesses and stores in the 1930s. That's what the Nazis did as a prelude to the Holocaust. They boycotted Jewish stores, Jewish businesses, and the BDS movement are the Nazis of our generation, and Hollywood are the Nazis of our generation. Wait till we tell you the story of what Hollywood has officially announced they're going to do against the Israeli film industry. Same boycott tactic that we saw in Nazi Germany in the 1930s. But before we get to that, this program is dedicated to Refuah Shlema, complete recovery, for Shlomo ben Sarah, Ruth bat Sarah, Dorit bat Sarah, Reuven ben Shoshana, and Ashedina bat Violet, and to Ilui Neshamot, elevating of the souls, for Sharon Mitman, Malka bat Meir, Allegra bat Shlomo, Daniel Nankin, Victor Chazdai, Pesach ben Dov, Lunita Adler, Shifra Hoffman, Reuven Hoffman, Barry Hoffman, Rab Mir Kahana, Rab Binyamin Kahana, Tzipora Fegi bat Liba, Yosef ben Meir, Robert Mitman, Dennis Shore, Helen Friedman, Charles Zolat, Yair Levine, Rachel D., and David ben Avraham. In the 1930s, one of the first things the Nazis did when they seized power in Germany in 1933 was begin a boycott campaign against Jewish stores and Jewish businesses. And they spray painted stars of David on the stores and wrote the words Jud or Juden, Jews in German. And they began a campaign of boycotting the Jews. And this was the beginning to prepare the German people and prepare Europe and the world for the annihilation of the Jewish people completely. And today we have the Nazis of our generation, the BDS movement, those who boycott Israel, Zoran Mamdani, all the Muslim countries are part of this, the whole Muslim world and all 57 Muslim countries are part of the Boycott Israel campaign, all of them. And now Hollywood has joined in the campaign to boycott, dehumanize, delegitimize Israel, and set up Israel for another Holocaust. For the 7 million Jews in Israel, they want to commit a Holocaust against the 7 million Jews in Israel. And so it was announced past day or so that over 1,800 actors, producers, and directors in Hollywood, the leading actors, producers, and directors in Hollywood signed a letter saying that they are going to now boycott Israel's film industry. And in the letter, they accused Israel of genocide and apartheid. But before we get to that, I just want to say something about Israel's film industry. I am so happy that they're doing this to Israel's film industry. I'm happy this is happening because the Israeli film industry are extreme left-wing Jewish anti-Semites, the scum of the earth, who produce films that are so anti-Israel. They must be in shock. I'm sure they're in shock, as many people on the Israeli left are in shock. You have many Israelis around the world and Jewish leftists and self-hating Jewish leftists who can't believe that they're being targeted by anti-Semitism, even though they are also anti-Semites. They're against their own people. And still, it doesn't help. Still, the Jew haters hate them as well. Now, in the letter, and by the way, they're the ones who cause the most of the anti-Semitism is caused by these left-wing Jews to begin with. But in any event, in the letter, they accuse Israel of genocide and apartheid. And, you know, of course, the opposite is true. It's Israel's enemies who are guilty of genocide and apartheid. It's the Muslim Nazi terrorists and Muslim Nazi nations that want to exterminate Israel and the Jewish people. They're guilty of genocide and apartheid. Not only are they guilty of genocide against the Jews and against Christians and against all non-Muslim infidels, they're guilty of genocide against their own people. Against their own brothers and sisters, they perpetrated Holocausts. And you never see Hollywood or the BDS people or Zoran Mamdani or the American or Western news media do any stories or protest about that. Never. Over 2 million Muslims were brutally annihilated by their fellow Muslims in the Iran-Iraq war. Over 2 million Muslims using chemical warfare and mustard gas and things that burn the skin off of the bones of the victims. I mean, the cruelest, most barbaric Holocaust. Over 2 million Muslims, 6-year-old Muslim boys were told, Iranian boys were told by the Ayatollahs to charge into Iraqi artillery so that the Iraqis would use up their artillery shells. Just unbelievable, the barbarism in that war. And again, over 2 million annihilated. This is what they do to their fellow Muslims, to their own brothers and sisters. Any protests about that? Do you ever hear about that? Any boycotts of Iran or of the people who did this? 1 million Arabs were annihilated, brutally annihilated, again using chemical warfare and the worst, most horrifying means of annihilation. Over 1 million Arabs were annihilated in Syria. Were there boycott campaigns against Syria? Did the United Nations have resolutions against Syria? Did anyone protest against Syria? Were there protests on campuses against Syria? In Lebanon, over 500,000 Arabs were slaughtered in all of the Lebanese civil wars since the 1970s. Over 500,000 Arabs. Over 300,000 of them were Lebanese Christians, because the Muslims in Lebanon are committed to exterminating Lebanon's Christian minority. And by the way, Lebanon was majority Christian when it was created. It was created to be a majority Christian state. It was created by France to be a majority Christian state because they knew that Christians can't survive in a Muslim country. And so they created Lebanon. Now it's a majority Muslim state. That's what happens when the Muslims, when the Muslims who are filled with hatred toward Christians are allowed to take over and move in. Eventually they'll become a majority, and eventually they're going to attack. And that's exactly what happened in Lebanon in the 1970s, 1980s. Altogether, over 500,000 Lebanese Arabs were annihilated. Again, a war with, we don't have time on this broadcast because I have to cover a lot of territory with this subject, but the brutality was unbelievable. I mean, tubs of acid, live people were thrown, men, women, and children, into tubs of acid. Unbelievable sadistic brutality. 250,000 Muslims, actually, 250,000 Muslims, Arab Muslims, were slaughtered in Algeria by their fellow Arab Muslims in the Algerian Civil War. And I can go on and on. I mean, these are holocausts that were committed by the Muslim world against their fellow Muslims, against their own brothers and sisters. If this is what they do to each other, if this is what they do to their own brothers and sisters, what would they do to the Jews if they ever had a chance? What would they do? We saw on October 7th what they would do to the Jews if they had a chance. And what would they do? And what would they do to the Christians? And what would they do to all the non-Muslim infidels? You think they're bluffing when they say the non-Muslim infidels have to be exterminated, which is what they're commanded to do in the Quran? They openly promise genocide against Jews and non-Muslim infidels. Openly, it's part of their charter of these terrorist organizations like Hamas and Hezbollah. But there are no boycotts against them. And no talk about genocide or apartheid against them. Israel represents anti-genocide and anti-apartheid. Israel's the opposite. Israel's fight is a fight against that. And those who support Israel's enemies are backing genocide and backing a new Holocaust and backing not just apartheid, but backing a Holocaust, supporting a Holocaust. Those who are against Israel are the Nazis of our generation. Because if the enemies of Israel win, that will lead to another Holocaust. And the charge of apartheid is made. Apartheid meaning forced racial segregation and religious segregation and discrimination. That charge is made against Israel. Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and other Muslim countries, officially, as part of their constitution, as part of their official laws, say that no Jew can own property or be a citizen in Jordan or Saudi Arabia or other Muslim countries. In Saudi Arabia, no non-Muslim can either be a citizen or own property in Saudi Arabia. That's the laws of Saudi Arabia. And no Jew is allowed. That's specifically written into the laws. The Jews are not allowed in Saudi Arabia, in Jordan, and other Muslim countries. That's apartheid. You hear any boycotts of Saudi Arabia or Jordan or other Muslim countries that openly practice apartheid throughout the whole time that they exist, throughout the whole time that these countries have existed? And by the way, they speak a lot about Palestinians, what's happening to the Palestinians. There are no Palestinians. If you stupid brain dead Jews continue to say Palestinians, you are burying Israel. You're responsible for all the bad things happening to Israel, you stupid brain dead Jews that keep saying Palestinians. Because if there's a Palestinian people, that means you're acknowledging that someone else owns that land, that the land doesn't belong to the Jewish people. The Muslims have 57 Nazi dictatorships, 57 countries, huge countries. Israel has one tiny little Jewish state. Okay, there is no Palestine, there are no Palestinians. That's the land of Israel, Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. It belongs to the Jewish people. God gave that land to the Jewish people as an eternal covenant. Now, it's hilarious, though, that the left-wing Israeli film media, film industry, which is so far left and so anti-Semitic and so anti-Israel, they're the ones being targeted here. I love it. I love it. Now, that doesn't mean, just because I'm happy that they're doing this to these left-wing Jewish traitors, that doesn't mean that we don't understand how evil, because their motivation is all evil. They just hate anyone who's Jewish no matter what. Even if the Jew is the worst self-hating Jew, they hate anyone who's Jewish. Once in a while, they'll use self-hating Jews to try to destroy the Jewish people. They'll use them temporarily. In the end, they want the same thing to happen to all the Jews. So we have to know who we're dealing with. You have some of these actors like Brad Pitt and Joaquin, what was his name? Joaquin Phoenix. Weird names of these weird people in Hollywood who created films against Israel. And do you know that these actors have created films, were executive producers on films against Israel? Did you know that? Did you know that the anti-Israel, anti-Semitic films got standing ovations and the greatest awards at all the film, at all the Venice film, they had the Venice International Film Festival, whatever it was called, and all these other film festivals. They're applauded everywhere. The whole entertainment world wants the Jews dead. And the Jews in the audience want the Jews dead. They participate in this as well. And by the way, there are Jews involved in this campaign against Israel who are also boycotting the Israeli film industry. They think by being good little traitors that they're not going to be targeted. Of course, if they're targeted, I have no pity on them. I have zero pity on them. Just as I have zero pity on the Hollywood Jews in the 1930s and 40s who refused to help the Jews during the Holocaust when Ben Hecht, the Hollywood producer, tried to organize to save the Jews during the Holocaust. And the overwhelming majority of Jews in Hollywood refused to help, refused to have anything to do with it. Okay, those Jews, by the way, who refused to help the 6 million Jews and who were themselves assimilated, self-hating Jews, Jewish anti-Semites, they're all burning in hell now. They're burning in hell together with Hitler and the Nazis. But anyway, the lies that they come up with, and we never learn our lesson. The starving Arabs, they say starving Palestinians. Of course, there are no Palestinians, and there are also no starving people. And this claim that their people are starving in Gaza is also baloney. Israel has brought in tens of thousands of tons of food to feed these people. Now, it's true that Hamas steals all of the food and then sells it to them at exorbitant prices. Hamas does do that. The people of Gaza deserve what they're getting. They wanted all the Jews dead. They were celebrating when the Jews were massacred on October 7th. And they're the ones who elected Hamas and enthusiastically almost unanimously supported what Hamas was doing to the Jews when it looked like Hamas might win, when it looked like Hamas was slaughtering the Jews before the Israeli reaction. So they're getting what they deserve. They're not innocent civilians. Just like the German civilians in Nazi Germany were not innocent civilians. The people who put Hitler in power are not innocent. And the people who put Hamas in power and Hezbollah in power in Lebanon and the Iranian mullahs in power in Iran are not innocent. So we have these scenes where, as you know, as we've said on a prior program, as long as you're going to have Arabs, as long as you're going to leave them sitting there in Gaza, the world is going to always say that now they're starving. This is going to be the new shtick, the new gimmick. The Arabs will always claim they're starving. No matter what you do, the Arabs are going to say they're starving. The only people starving in Gaza are the Jewish hostages that the Iranians, that the Hamas Muslim Nazis took and are keeping them hostage. They're starving. They're literally starving to death. The Hamas terrorists are sadistically starving them. But they're the only people starving in Gaza. Now, if we were in charge, what would happen? The Arabs would be moved out of Gaza. President Trump himself proposed this. You remember President Trump proposed getting the Arabs out of Gaza? We would have done it. We would have done what President Trump proposed. We would have said, yes, Mr. President, we're going to do that. We would have gotten them out. And believe me, we could get them out. And believe me, there are dozens of countries around the world that would accept them. Where did they go now? Do you know that hundreds of thousands since October 7th, since the October 7th, 2023 massacre of the Jews on the outskirts of Gaza, since that happened, that horrific massacre, that monstrous attack, since that happened, did you know that hundreds of thousands of Gazans have left? Hundreds of thousands did get out. Where did they go? You say people say, well, who's going to accept them? Who accepted how did the hundreds of thousands do it? They did it by themselves without any help from anybody. They managed to get out. Under the European Union rules, by the way, every one of them is a refugee. They have to be accepted as refugees. They can't be sent back. They're refugees. And the Europeans who so enthusiastically support Israel's destruction, okay, you support the Arab, take in the refugees. And you take them. You like them? Take them. We hope you choke on them. And so if we were in charge, the people who remain in Gaza we would get them out, just as President Trump proposed doing in the beginning of the war. We would have gotten them out. Also, there would be no food. The people of Gaza really would have been starving. And not only that, there'd be no water. We would cut off the water supply. And they would be dying of thirst. And so they would surrender, and surrender fast. The war would have been over in several days. Over 900 Jewish soldiers who have been massacred in this war would have been alive if we were in charge. There would have been a quick victory, a complete solution to the problem. The world, the anti-Semites would still be complaining about the Gazans who were moved out, but it wouldn't be worse than it is now. And we would have gotten rid of this horrible problem, this cancerous tumor that is endangering Israel. We would have gotten them out and gotten rid of that problem. And it has to be done not just for the Gazans. This is encouraging Arab immigration from Israel is the only humane solution. This is something that should be done in regard to all the Arab Muslims in the land of Israel. They should be encouraged to leave. And the overwhelming majority want to leave. They don't want to stay. They want to go. They very much want to go. All we are saying is, let's help them go. Help them. Help them do what they want to do. Now, I think it should also be mentioned, by the way, that, again, if people had listened to us all these years, step by step, none of these terrible things would happen. All the terrible things that are endangering Israel's very existence now, none of them would be happening. If you didn't give away Sinai, Israel would have had hundreds of billions of dollars in oil revenue from the oil in Sinai. All of that was given to Egypt by Menachem Begin. We, of course, said you should not give up 1 inch of Sinai. If you didn't throw the Jews out of Gush Katif, you never would have had this problem. The presence of the Jews in Gush Katif would have prevented and blocked the Hamas terrorists from carrying out the attack that they carried out. Every step of the way, the Oslo agreements, we warned that the Oslo agreements were a catastrophe, where they recognized Arafat and recognized a Palestinian people that don't exist. A nightmare. If they had listened to us all of these years, none of these things would happen. Israel would be much bigger, much stronger, much more prosperous. And although there'd be anti-Semitic attacks on Israel, it would be less than what we have now, with a weakened Israel, with an Israel that's always in danger and weakened and Jews being massacred. On the day that I'm doing this program, 6 more innocent Jews were blown up, were gunned down and murdered in Jerusalem in a terrorist attack. 6 in a Muslim Nazi terrorist attack in the middle of Jerusalem. 6 more innocent Jews were gunned down and murdered. 5 were seriously injured, and I hope that they'll survive their injuries, and I hope they'll be able to overcome their injuries. But 5 were seriously injured, and 6 were murdered on this very day. And 4 more Israeli soldiers were murdered in Gaza. So 10 Jews lost their lives. That means 10 Jewish families had one of their loved ones taken away from them in a brutal, violent, murderous, sadistic attack. 10 Jewish families have to experience this horror, this nightmare. If there are any people out there, Jews or righteous Gentiles, with an ounce of morality, you should feel the pain of those Jewish families and of those Jews that are being massacred. Just as we should have felt the pain of the 6 million Jews during the Holocaust. That's what Judaism and the Bible and God command us to do. We're supposed to feel their pain. We're not allowed to stand by and watch our brother's blood being spilled. We're not allowed to do that. And so we want to give you a chance now to give Hollywood a gift that they'll choke on. May the name of the wicked rot. Yimach Shmam v'zichram means may their names be obliterated, and then Shem Reshaim Yerkav means may the names of the wicked rot. That's our little blessing for the Hollywood self-hating Jews and the other anti-Semites in Hollywood. The Hilltop youth, the heroes of Israel, who are the only hope we have for preventing a Palestinian terrorist state, which would be national suicide for Israel, because that's what the next step. The whole world is going to demand that Israel create a Palestinian state. And with the weak, pathetic leaders we have in Israel, that's going to happen, God forbid, unless we support the heroic Hilltop youth. You know, by the way, I mentioned that hundreds of thousands of Gazans are leaving Gaza. That stopped. You know when it stopped? When Israel took over the Philadelphia corridor and the Israeli army came in and took over, that stopped. Shabak, the Israeli FBI, it's really the Israeli KGB, also controlled by extreme left-wing Jews, are blocking Arabs who want to leave Gaza from leaving, are preventing them from leaving. Many of them want to flee. The Israelis, the Israeli traders, are preventing them from. There are good Israeli Jews, like the Hilltop youth. But the people in charge of Israel are traitors. And they are blocking Arabs who want to leave from leaving. They're preventing them from leaving. I mean, can you imagine anything so insane? The Hilltop youth, with the dozens of hilltops that they have seized throughout Judea and Samaria, are the only hope for blocking the Arabs from taking over all of Judea and Samaria. Otherwise, the Arabs are going to move. If the Hilltop youth aren't there, God forbid, the Arabs will come in and take over everything. They'll just take it all over. And that's it. And the Palestinian state will exist, whether Israel accepts it or doesn't accept it, likes it or doesn't like it. It will come into being. That's it. And Israel will accept it. But whether Israel likes it or not, it will come into being if the Arabs physically take over all of Judea and Samaria. That's going to happen. And they were on their way to taking over. They were going to take over a long time ago. They were going to take over, if not for the Hilltop youth. The Hilltop youth literally blocked them and stopped them. The Hilltop youth cut Arab territorial continuity, and with the Jewish settlements that the Hilltop youth created, they literally have blocked the Arabs from carrying out their nefarious plans. But we're in a lot of danger here because there are only a few thousand Hilltop youth there that are holding out. And there are tens of thousands more that want to join them if we have enough at least to give them basic food, the most basic things to survive there. We need to give them that. And the winter is coming. In the winter, there are very cold rains. Those are hilltop areas. Israel is not a very cold country, but in the wintertime, when in the areas where there are hills and mountains, it can get quite chilly and very windy. And there's a lot of cold rain that comes down, a lot of pouring rain that comes down. And if we don't have the basics to help them get through the winter, it's going to be very, very rough. We need your help. We need all the help we can get. We need now to raise money for them to help them in the wintertime to get through the winter, and also so that we can bring more Jewish families there and more Jews there, because many more Jews want to move there. They want to come there. They've inspired Jewish idealism, and there are other Jewish idealists who want to join them. But if there's no food there, and there's no way to access food there, and there's no way to access water, and there's no way to do any of the other basic things we need, if we can't give them a tent to cover themselves in the rain and the winter, you can't move people there to just go out there with no food, no water, no nothing, no transportation. That we can't do. We've got to have more resources and support if we're going to build on the Hilltop Youth to stop them, because the danger is coming very fast. There are going to be elections in Israel. We may get a left-wing government in Israel. Okay, they pretend not to be left-wing, but they are left-wing that will support a Palestinian state. The danger is very, very real. We've got to support the Hilltop Youth now. We've got to help them. We've got to help them get through the winter, and we've got to help them bring more Jewish families there. So because the more Jews you bring in, the better chance we have of preventing the creation of a Palestinian state, which is a very serious and huge danger that can happen. It very much can happen. We're fighting against the odds to stop it from happening. But without the Hilltop Youth, we don't have any cards to play with. We have nothing. There's nothing there to stop it. Nothing. Here's how you help the heroic Hilltop Youth. You go to our Hebrew main page, which is hayamin.org. On hayamin.org, the page is in Hebrew, but there's a donate button in English on top. You click on the donate button in English, and in several minutes, you can easily and conveniently donate. You can make recurring monthly donations. You can make one-time donations, or you can make both. Very important to help us online to support the Hilltop Youth. That's if you want to support the Hilltop Youth online. If you want to support by the way, 100% of our budget goes to the Hilltop Youth. We don't pay any salaries here. 100% of our budget goes to Hilltop Youth. Okay? 100%. I give all of my money to the Hilltop Youth. My own personal money I give to the Hilltop Youth. I give hundreds of thousands of dollars. And believe me, I'm not a rich person, but I worked all my life. And I give my money to the Hilltop Youth. I'm the biggest donor in our organization. I'm by far the biggest donor. But we have other generous people as well. God bless them. Wonderful people who help us. And by the way, donations, big or small, even if you can't afford a bigger donation, if you only afford a small one, God bless you. It'll be very much appreciated. Donation of any size, any help that you can give will be appreciated. Of course, we want to try to give as much as we can. The more you give, the better. But any donation will be very much appreciated, of any size. That's if you want to help the Hilltop Youth online. If you want to help the Hilltop Youth through the regular mail, you just send checks and money orders made out to J.T.F. and you send it to J.T.F. P.O. Box 650327, Fresh Meadows, New York 11365. And yes, you should leave J.T.F. in your will. If you leave J.T.F. in your will, you're going to be helping the Hilltop Youth and leaving this a better place with the true idealists, the most magnificent, idealistic, honest, heroic people. You can't help a better cause than that. And so we're in a battle against evil people, self-hating people, evil people, immoral people, Jew haters, the Nazis of our generation, And these are the people we're fighting against are the Nazis of our generation, no doubt about it. We need your help to win this battle. The Hilltop youth needs your help to win this battle. We've got to be able to do everything we can to help them, and we have to understand that their fight is our fight, for Jews and for righteous Gentiles. For J.T.F. until next week, this is Chaim Ben Pesach. Shalom.